Hello my loves, welcome back to Zeke's Lunchbox. Today we are going to review a couple of my patrons' artwork back from November. If you're unaware, on my Patreon I offer a service where I review people's art. So I go through a list of elements that make up an artwork. Here is the list over here. I go through that list categorically so I can really pinpoint and try and be as objective as possible with my critique on all of those elements. And then also it comes with a video response as well, so everybody else can witness each other's artwork reviews. If people don't have an artwork that they want reviewed for that month, they can also ask a question like the question that I will be chatting about in the end. Here it is. That's been something that's been happening over on Patreon for the last year or so. I've done a very terrible job at informing you guys of this service. So if that is something you are interested in, I will link a pinned comment in the comment section, and then it'll also be in the description box as well. So before we head into the video, I just want to let you guys know, I always have to say this before we get into all of these sort of videos, I'm just trying to be as objective and as helpful as possible since this is a service that people ask for. They want to improve their artwork and maybe they're not sure which areas to improve in. People get very fussy about critiquing art, but this is just something that happens in the art industry, and at art school it's just a common practice that we all review each other's art, not to drag each other down. This is just a way to be productive and so we can all learn and maybe see things that we didn't see in our own artwork. The two pieces that I'm talking about today, I have gotten the permission of the two patrons, so I'm not just putting them on blast. I will pop their handles below as well if you want to follow them. Here are both of their handles on Instagram if you want to support and follow those guys as well. And make sure you like and subscribe and keep asking those comments, because every single week I answer a comment at the end of the video. For next week's video, pop a comment below. Lots of instructions, let's just get into it. Okay, so the very first artwork we are going to go through here is this hand heart surreal dark brooding painting. So it has a heart in dark neon lighting with a blue cyan hue, and then beneath it has two hands clasping. In this email, you mentioned that your goal was to bring to life a surreal concept in a way that looked photorealistic. So you mentioned that you wanted to improve the texture and make it more photorealistic and more convincing, and you're not sure where to start. To this submitter, the colors here are really, mysterious and brooding. Like I mentioned, the neon light and having that one light source is really cool and really surreal, and I think it's just a really interesting image. So well done with the colors that you've chosen. I think the intention that you set out with the piece, I think were executed really well. Yeah, I think the colors work really well for the piece, so I don't have much else that I can really critique in terms of the colors, because I think you've got a good grasp and varying amounts there. Color was fine and really good, so congratulations and well done. Next up is line. You can see here in the strokes, I would consider that line. I know it's not like a traditional line art piece, but they can kind of derive it on line / texture. And I think these textured parts here work really well. Adding those strokes is a really good idea, so everything's not just, like fluffy, especially with digital art, it can get fluffy very quickly. So adding in that textured line is a really good idea. So well done with that, and I would say continue using that. In the example that I suggested for you to look into was James Jean has a piece of art that I attached and sent to you where he gives the artwork, it's a little bit more dimensional, and I think that's maybe where you could give more of a photorealistic look. Giving really correct form really helps to sell the more photorealistic look to things. So if you are going to continue using these lines as a texture mechanism, I would recommend that you really over dramatize the shape of the line, and that will make things look a little bit more 3D. If you pushed the lines a little bit further and made them more three-dimensional and really pushed it, it would help even further. Because right now you can see here that the lines are quite straight, and I just feel like you could push it even more and make it just a little bit rounder. So don't be afraid to really push and over exaggerate an item, because the way you see it in your mind is different to how it enacts in real life on paper or on a canvas or what have you. Try and over exaggerate, because some of the time when you over exaggerate, it kind of just comes out the correct way. I often find, like, especially when I'm drawing hands, I try and overextend the arch of a finger, and in the end it turns out more realistic. It has more dynamicism to it. Okay, next up, light and value. Really good amounts of light and value in this piece. When you squint with the artwork, you can really see a lot of the cyans and the dark shadows. So good amounts of contrast there, so well done. If you want to make it look more photorealistic, however, you do need to pick a very sharp focal point with your light and kind of die down a little bit further elsewhere. So an example with that would be light direction is coming over here. So what you really want is more drama. I think you could push it even further. You do have your highlights, but I feel like you could add a couple of actual just white to really sell something feeling more three-dimensional. This whole area here, the highlights could just be all white instead, and that would really help make everything look a little bit more dramatic. And then you could have pushed, you know, the cyan colors a bit further. That way, like, around here is your mid-tone, and then over here is your highlight. Go further than you think you need to go with it. So make sure the highlights are like really, really highlighted, especially with a heart. It's nice and shiny. You can get those really sharp white little like blobs of highlights. Again, with light and values, don't be afraid to go even further. Shape, composition, and space. Composition's very straightforward, really dramatic, right in your face, right in the center, with not much else around it, because you really want the eye to just focus right on the actual subject matter, which is fantastic. Great, works really well. The thing that I feel like could really help with this piece, however, is just adding a little bit more value in the background to really hero your main focal point. So a thing that a lot of painters like to do is they like to put a little highlight or some lighter tones in the background to separate the shadows from the main component, the main focal point, and separate it from the background a little bit further. You really want to try and separate all of your images as much as possible with light composition and light and all of that, just so the eye can really figure out what you are looking at. So you've kind of done it a little bit here. This area here, you can see there is some separation from the background, which is really good. So you've already shown that you're capable of doing that. It's just a matter of teasing it out and going a little bit more dramatic with it all. Go in with the background. This is obviously just as an example, so it's not going to be really beautiful or anything, but I have attached an example of something that demonstrates this a little bit better. I'll put that up on screen, of this ballet dancer, and you can see that there is light in the background just to give it a bit more dimension, a bit more separation in space. But otherwise, really, really good. You've done a really good job with this piece. It's just, you know, tiny little tweaks. Bonus round is anatomy. I think with this one, I would say just study the two separate elements a little bit further if you want to really understand how to draw them more realistically. If you have a bunch of elements that you're combining together, I recommend studying them separately and a couple of times before you try to meld them together, because that way you're making the paths in your brain and memorizing exactly what areas have the extreme little highlights, what parts like curve a particular way. You're just building muscle memory in your brain by studying exercises. So I would recommend doing that further in the future. So with the fingers, I do feel that they are a little bit even, and in the future, if you want something to look a bit more realistic, fingers aren't perfectly symmetrical and even. You know, each width distance is pretty much the same throughout each finger, and each finger does, depending on the angle, you know, change throughout. So they ultimately look very similar on this hand here, and it's the same here. So, you know, you could round out the hand a bit further out here, accentuate that bone in the wrist, could round out a little bit further. Look, I'm not going to go too further into it. Because my main recommendation is just to study further. Fingernails could be a bit rounder. Of course, everybody's a little different. See how each highlight is pretty much even and the same throughout? Try and avoid that in the future. So, you know, here you can go like these two, you could go 100% on the highlights, and then here you could go like 70%. Just to try and vary up things a little bit further, because nothing is perfectly evenly lit on each finger. You know, a hand has different lighting on each individual finger. As you can see, like this finger here is darker than this finger here. So just try and mix up the lighting a little bit more. Yeah, just keep practicing, because ultimately that's always going to be the recommendations that I give to you guys. Just keep practicing, but keep going, because this is really, really good. Just some really slight tweaks. Please refer to the email, because I probably missed a bunch of things, and go through the references that I sent you. Thank you so much for submitting. Okie dokie. So the next submitter has submitted this doll-like girl with a cute fluffy white creature in a pastel rainbow universe with like ice cream hair and lots of magical amazing things. I forgot what the original artist that coined this surreal sky candy look, I forgot the original artist, but the inspiration for that Katy Perry video clip, I don't know if that was the inspiration for you. Thank you so much for submitting and being a patron for the last couple of months. It's been really nice having you on board, and you know, continue to keep coming back. Massive improvement from, you know, your very first critique to the one that you have now. I'm really excited and happy to see what you've done here, and I also want to congratulate you on finishing this piece. I know you mentioned that it's taken you a couple of years to get around to finishing it, and I think now that you've finished this piece, I think it's a really good signifier for what you are capable of, and that you have demonstrated that you can finish a big extreme oil painting, and that you're more than capable to keep going on in your journey. So finished is better than perfect, so well done. Congrats to you. Great use of colors, lots of nice pastel tones throughout the piece, so everything matches really well with the ideas and concepts that you are portraying here. Lovely colors, particularly in the swirl here. I really like that you have used like some nice pastel tones in the shadows, and then also for your midtones you've used some pinks and blues. When you're painting white, those are the sort of colors that you need to introduce rather than just gray. So I would like for you to continue doing that in future and continue using color like that. As a painter, you should be able to decipher and really see that, you know, every object that we interact with has every color in it. So everything is a rainbow, and please continue doing so. I think I mentioned in the email that I do feel that the eyes are a little heavy. Although I think you can use heavier tones in a pastel piece, I would like for them to be peeled back ever so slightly to more of a lighter tone, because right now, although like the contrast is really nice with the eyes, I do think it is still a little bit heavy. So for future pieces, maybe just instead of using, I know you mentioned you use a Payne's gray, but you don't have to use the Payne's gray right out of the tube. Add a bit of white, and that can be your darkest tone, you know, like a dusky Payne's gray rather than like a black Payne's gray. Just because everything's so pastel, it almost disrupts the light fluffiness. Contrast is good, but sometimes you can go over contrasted. This is just a matter of opinion for me anyway. If you disagree, I won't hold it to you. Sometimes you have to fight for what you believe is correct in your own artwork. So I have to do it all the time and defend my own artwork. That's part of being an artist. So look, for me, I think some things could be lightened up a little bit, or the rest of the piece needs to be darkened a little bit further, which I think probably is the case here. I think where you could use the most improvement, just because right now I'm trying to decipher where the light source is, and it looks like it is over here, which is fine, but because your girl is here, it's almost like the lighting isn't flattering or complimenting her enough. It's almost like the light source should come here instead, you know? So maybe in future, some planning out your piece of where your light source is going to be could be beneficial. That way you really understand and you can hero the main focal point as much as possible with creating good dynamic light that shines on her face. So tip going forward, maybe plan the lighting before you go through with an artwork. I want to actually tell this to everybody. Before you dive straight into an artwork, plan where your composition is. If you don't know how to draw something, do a bunch of studies prior to that. I plan my pieces really thoroughly. You can see that from all of the tarot card vlogs. You can see that I sketch up all of the elements first, so I know exactly what my forms are. Then I plan all the colors, and then I plan the lighting, and then I paint it. So I think it is really necessary. It seems like it's going to take you a lot longer to do it this long way, but the more you plan, the less mental load you will have when you are painting. So you have to make so many different decisions when you're painting. So if things are already planned out, you just have to stick to it. It actually speeds up the process a lot further. Like I mentioned in the email, I think you've got good extreme lights and tones in the cherry. And I would like to see you do this a little bit further in other pieces, because I know like the eyes and the cherry are similar, but it's feeling for me a little bit uneven. Like I kind of just want a little bit more dimension in the character to separate these guys from the background. So with future pieces down the road, I'd like for you to have a bit more separation from the background and the focal point. I've just done this quick outline here so you can see like where the extreme contrast should be heading in the future. Because the creature is white and the background has lots of like pastel tones as well, I think that contrast could be a little bit stronger. I mean, it works pretty well here. Like you don't have to go so extreme, or around here, that works. It's just that here might be a bit questionable, and here I am losing it a bit further. So with your lighting, just in future, make sure there is a bit more separation and contrast there. Okay, so good use of rule of thirds. I think that works well, and also with the cherry here, it kind of balances it out. Next time, maybe you could make the secondary character a little bit smaller, because right now they are about the same size. And I think if this were, you know, if this character were just a little bit smaller, so the ears were here, you know, a little bit hard to see, it would not compete with the main character too much more. But otherwise, I think it's great, and I honestly think you've got a good grasp on it for this one. Flow and energy, great emotion, good energy. Composition you've chosen pushes the narrative really well. It's like this really nice hero portrait. It's got a really cute, fluffy, kind, warm feel, so well done with that. It seems to me that that was your intention. Because this is more stylized, it's a little hard to give proper anatomy tips. However, I think Proko on his channel has a good caricature video that I will link. I didn't send it in the email, but I will link to it. I want you to just continue studying life drawing, just that way when you know all the rules, you know how to break them. So if you know how to draw a face more realistically, you know the choices that you need to do in order to like really sell that. Maybe look into some more like Pixar behind the scenes as well, and how to like capture good emotion in the face, especially a stylized face. This isn't my area of expertise, so I can't give too much tips on that. All right, it's the end of the video. I hope you guys liked those reviews. Comment below if there are any tips in there that you found helpful. Now, I'm doing this new thing on my channel where I get you guys to ask questions about the art industry, anything to do with art that you guys want help with. Comment below and I may select your comment for next week's video. If you guys are interested and you're trolling the comments to see what you want to see more of, give it a thumbs up as well, so I know that you guys are interested in that topic. Maybe next week we can chat about art mediums, or what art mediums are best for your style of art. Could be kind of interesting. Comment below. This week's comment is submitted by J Van. They have asked, is going to tertiary education, university, whatever, worth it for art? Would you recommend an art-related degree or a business degree for freelance? All right, I'm gonna try and give the pros and cons for going to school. Just a heads up though, I didn't go to art school. I went to design school. So I did a Bachelor of Fashion and Textiles at the University of Sydney in Australia. I really hated doing my university degree because in the end, that medium just wasn't quite fitting for me, and as you can see, years down the track I've more gone into the art related route. That should already tell you that your degree may not mean that you are necessarily going to go into that industry. It's an age-old cliche for you to do a degree and you do a totally different career. I feel like every single person I know has done some kind of random degree back in the day and now they're doing something completely different. Maybe something kind of parallel, but just for people who are just graduating or choosing to go to school, or maybe you want to go back to school, just know a degree doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go into that industry. You might switch up at some point. Pros about going to university: it keeps you accountable, you network a lot, you have access to really amazing resources and workspaces. You get a piece of paper at the end. You may learn a bunch of things that you never even considered learning, which I think is always a good thing. Also, you learn how to work with people you don't want to work with. Those annoying group assignments where maybe the results in the end of the actual assignment weren't good, but what you did take away from it was learning how to work with people you don't like. So all of those things, please consider when you're going to university. You're not just gaining skills and learning the actual course, more learning those like peripheral sort of skills that you may not have considered, like the ones I just suggested. Going to university is a really good rite of passage. It makes things very official, like you've accomplished something and now you're ready to graduate into a new phase in life. So the more symbolic journey is, I think, really helpful when it comes to going to university. So consider all of those things. Do I think you need to go to art school to become an artist? I am a prime example of somebody who didn't go to art school. Now it's what I do for a living. The cons: quickly, it's really expensive. You may find it a massive waste of time. You may hate everybody that you go to school with, or the location that your school is in doesn't have all the things that I just mentioned in the positive list. It's really stressful and you may ruin every single interpersonal relationship you have just to sacrifice your time to do this degree for something that you don't even care for and you really hate it and it's really expensive, and all of those accumulating all in one. I've felt those as well. So just know that you don't have to do a degree to do a career. It makes things easier by knowing all the connections, but those are the pros and cons for you guys to weigh up. I need to know more specifically about people's journeys to really tell them if it's necessary. I just want you guys to make the conclusions so you guys can think critically and make decisions for yourself. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching and thank you so much for that question. I really hope it answered some things. If it did, comment below, and I will see you guys in the next video for next week. Let me show you what's going on here. I've got a bunch of packing. Gonna be a mad packing vlog, so I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.